Do you know that every time I record a podcast, I wonder, is this the time I'm going to get canceled? Is this the topic that is going to make me lose all my friends, all my followers? I'm going to sound crazy. Well, of all the topics, this is the topic that I delayed talking about for years because I believe this is a sensitive topic. So, and I have strong opinions about it. And I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. But I think that sometimes we need to say the thing that needs to be said out of love, out of compassion. And if you will listen to this video all the way through, then I think you'll see where I'm coming from, no matter where you started at, and it'll be something to consider. What am I talking about that is so controversial that I did not want to talk about it for years? Parenting. Parenting. It is a hot topic. And it's so frustrating because there are so many different pieces of advice. And we go to church and we hear one thing. We hear from the world another thing. Then we have the way that we were raised as kids. And then we have the way that we are looking at our own parenting. Parenting is the place where parents need confidence more than anything. Remember, confidence is different than arrogance. We need confidence that we are doing the very best for our kids to the very best of our ability, and so that we will not succumb to random bits of pieces and information that make us swing back and forth in our parenting style. Kids want consistency. Whether you're a soft parent, whether you're a hard parent, whether you're a permissive parent or a authoritative parent, consistency is reassuring to a kid. They know what to expect. I am talking about parenting as in raising strong versus submissive children. Now, just so you know where I'm coming from, I have raised two kids. They're going to be turning 22 and 20 in a few weeks. A girl, then a boy. I do not talk about my children a lot because I believe that they have a right to their privacy. They have a right to their life. That already puts me a little bit different than other people. But just so you know where I'm coming from and why I'm so passionate about this, let me tell you my own childhood. So I was raised in a strict religious upbringing, independent fundamental Baptist, for those of you who know. And I am a Christian, still Christian, love Jesus. And there are things about my upbringing that were very, very helpful, and there are things that were not. That's basic. That's almost everybody's thing. But when it came to parenting, I paid attention. Let me tell you how much I paid attention. I was reading the parenting books before my mom got through them, and there were a lot of parenting books. My mom was not a person that was buying books, so she must have been being given them for free. And it seems like the two voices that were the loudest were James Dobson, Jack Hyles. So I was reading James Dobson and Jack Hyles' information about parenting when I was a kid. I was a precocious kid. I probably annoyed the heck out of my parents. But I've been thinking about this topic for almost 40 years. That's how long. All right, this is what I have realized both from reading the books about parenting, watching my parents parent, and then parenting on my own. So I've been paying attention for a really, really long time. Number one, the one thing that I was taught as a kid is to obey. To obey no matter what. Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. But here's what I've learned. When we let fear guide our parenting, sometimes we miss teaching our kids better lessons. For example, there are dangerous people out in the world who are looking to harm people, men and women, boys and girls. This is why I feel so strongly about the idea that our goal as parents is not to raise submissive children. See, our goal as parents is not even to raise children. Our goal as parents is to turn children into strong adults. So here's the irony of this. If we raise our children to be strong, then they have an option and they can choose to submit to authority. They can choose to obey. They can choose. There is a reasoning and a logic that can happen. They will choose to submit to one another and they'll be able to see a fuller picture. But when we raise them to be merely submissive to all authority, obedient to all authority, we're not even teaching them they have a choice. Submissive people, and I have seen this play out, not even in children, but going into relationships and marriage. And this is why there's a problem with reports of abuse, even in Christian circles, because we are teaching our kids to be submissive rather than strong. We are teaching them, and when they are submissive, they actually don't believe they have a choice. So we are not teaching them to lead, and we are making them more likely to fall prey to people who are looking to take advantage of other people. The goal is not to teach our children to submit. The goal is to train up our children to be strong so they have options and then they can choose whether to yield to another person or not. That's what submit is, yield. Like we come to a four-way stop and nobody knows who got there first. And everybody is at this moment of, am I going to exert my right to go or am I going to yield to the other person? It's helpful to take a pause and decide until somebody goes and then the next person proceeds and then it moves better again. Okay, so I know this sounds crazy. Maybe it doesn't sound crazy, but coming from my circles, it sounds crazy that I am saying the goal is not to teach your children to be obedient, to be submissive all the time. The goal is to teach your children to be strong. You know, there's the verse in the Bible, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. If we look at that verse like it is a promise, and many times we are tempted to look at that verse like it's a promise, like I am claiming that. And we're thinking, what is it that we want to train our children to? And so that I can be guaranteed, if I train my kids to do this, I will be guaranteed that they will not stray from it. They'll do exactly that when they're older. Okay, number one, that's overcoming free will. So that cannot possibly be how it works. Number two, what if we're training them in not so great ways? Because let's just be honest, we're human. Like even the way that I parent, even though I try to do my best parenting, I made mistakes. As in some of it was reactionary to the way my parents taught. You know, so maybe they were a little bit this far and I leaned a little bit too much. And we both believe the same things. We both love our children. And train up a child when we're looking at it like it's a promise. What we're really trying to do is we are actually parenting from fear. Like I don't want anything bad to happen to my kid. So train up a child in the way you should go. When he's older, he will not depart from it. Children, obey your parents in the Lord so that nothing bad will happen to you. Oh gosh, I hate to say this. But maybe nobody has ever said this to you. Bad things are going to happen. Look at Job. There is no promise in the Bible that will prevent bad things from happening. Now, the promise that we do have in the Bible is this. We know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are the called according to his purpose. As in, what starts out bad can be turned. But it doesn't mean that it won't look bad, it won't feel bad, it won't seem bad, and by all measurable things, it won't truly be bad. It won't be a tragedy. Look at Job. Bad things do happen. There is no promise, there is no guarantee in the world that says, if you're a Christian and you do it all right, nothing bad will happen. We cannot parent from the idea that we are protecting our kids from bad things happening. Like that we can actually 100% do that. I'm going to break that out in just a second. So keep on hanging in there. But we can train our kids to be strong and make it less likely that they will fall victim to evil people, or they will freeze in bad situations, that they won't know what to do, won't know their power, won't know their potential, won't know where to go to help. So, number one, I'm just going to take a break and say this. If you are a parent of a headstrong kid, don't think that is a bad thing. That means that kid's already got some strength and some grit in or her, and channel that. Don't break that out of them. Channel it. If you have a child who is more naturally compliant, that does not mean that, oh my goodness, look at me, I'm such a great parent. Look how obedient and submissive my child is. I have both. I started out with one child that was very more naturally compliant and one child that was very headstrong. And it was like, let me give you perspective, as in notice how your sibling does things. Notice that there is a benefit to both sides. So many things. This is going to be too long of a video. I'm going to have to cut it out. I might have to split it into a couple. But let's go on to 3 ways to teach children to be strong rather than submissive. Remember, what is the goal of parenting? To raise them up to be adults. What do they need to know as an adult? There's so many things. What did you need to know as an adult? Look at your own life. What lessons in your own life would you have been better for having learned sooner? What lessons in your own life would you have been better for having learned sooner? There's got to be an easier way of saying that phrase. All right, the 3 ways to teach your children to be strong. I'm going to give you one at a time and break it out. Number 1, I want you to know what you believe and why you believe it and why this belief is important. See, when we're thinking train up a child in the ways you go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it, and we're treating it like it's a promise, then we're like, oh my gosh, there's so much I need to train them in. Okay, newsflash, that is not a promise, that is a pattern. It's revealing a pattern, as in, your children are little mimics. This is how they learn. They're copying you. I remember being on the beach one time and watching this little boy walk with this kind of limp, and he was little, like 1 year old, barely walking. But one foot was kind of turned out, and it was almost like he was limping, and one foot was strong. And I thought, oh my goodness, does this poor child have a problem walking? And then right in front of him, I saw his dad walking. And that's how his dad walked. There wasn't a problem. There was just a pattern. And when it was repeated stronger and to an exaggerated manner in his child. This is the same thing as when you might be like, shaking your finger at your little kid, and then they shake their finger back at you. It's adorable. It's hilarious. They're repeating a pattern. Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he's old, he will not depart from it. As in, we are training all the time, whether we're realizing it or not. We are training all the time, whether we're aware of it or not. So let's become more aware of it. Key number 1. So 3 ways to teach your children to be strong. Number 1, know what you believe, why you believe it, why this belief is important. As in, if you only got to pass on maybe 3 to 5 lessons to your kid, 3 to 5 deep truths, 3 to 5 things that when they left the home, they would know for a certainty, Mom and Dad believe this. They've lived by this. This is what they stood for. What are those things? What are those things to you? Now, don't go thinking that this is going to be the same for everybody, because it really is not. It's so interesting. When I asked this question myself, it really was this concept of free will and personal responsibility, and how we have to, as mature adults, be accountable for our own actions and take accountability and And so when I looked at how I parented, I was teaching that all the way through. By the way, you'll see that in my kids to this day, how they are very much their own person. They have their own thought, their own beliefs about politics and about spiritual matters and about what they want to do with their life. And they know that it's up to them, that because they are autonomous, free will beings. So, and I'm so proud of them. I really am. I'm so proud of who they are because I know it's not me, it's them growing, from the beliefs that I've taught and modeled. And also, by the way, the ones that I was just kind of giving lip service to, like, oh, I think this is important. Those are the ones that did not click. Those are the ones that did not stick. All right, know what you believe, why you believe it, why this belief is important. When you are certain of what's important to yourself, what's important to your family, what's the belief that you would want to see in your children's children, live that, teach that, model that. That's number one. That's one way. The second way to teach your children to be strong is teach them this, that their body, their time, their talents, even their possessions are all theirs to steward. Start teaching them to take ownership even as a child. So this is beneficial on so many levels. But first of all, let me say this. As your parent, this is how I thought when my kids were very, very little, that as their parent, it was my role as a parent to protect them when they were too young to protect themselves. But I also believed it was my role to prepare them to become their own person and then to allow them to make their own choices and face their own consequences. So this is how I approach the teachings of, it's a dangerous world and there are horrible people that want to take advantage of children. Your body is your own. Nobody's allowed to touch it if you don't let them, okay? Your body is your own. Nobody's allowed to touch it if you don't allow them. If you're uncomfortable, come talk to me. Anytime, whatever, you won't get in trouble. Here's another thing that I did. I didn't allow them to spend the night anywhere until I felt like they were old enough to own that kind of truth, and they were old enough and mature enough to protect themselves from dangers like that, as in to speak up, to shout, to ask for help, to call me, whatever it was. I am not talking about ruining the innocence of childhood. I'm talking about protecting it. So we can teach children from a very, very young age, hey, your body's your own. You don't need to let people be touching it. No. You don't need to be, no. That's not what we do. And not make a big deal out of it, but just instill in them the truth. Your body's your own. Nobody needs to be touching it but you. That's nobody else's business. Your time, your talents, your possessions. I believe in the free will. I believe in the free market economy. I believe in capitalism. So I taught my kids, you guys each have toys. Now, it's more fun if you will be willing to share with each other, because then you get to play. It's like you have double the amount of toys, and because it's more fun to play with each other than to always be playing by yourself. That's how I taught the concept of sharing. But yeah, your toys are your own. If you don't want to share, you don't have to. And there's sometimes a very good reason why you don't want to share, because some kids really, really do not know how to take care of toys and they will break it. Do you see how when you know what's important to you, then you start teaching it on very, very young, consistent levels to your kids? Now, your lessons might be different. I remember I met a woman sometime last year, and she was telling me about how it was so important to her to be a person who helps out in the community, helps the less fortunate. And it was so neat because she shared with me all the things that she did. And then she shared with me how often she took her young grandchildren along for the ride. and show them the same values of generosity and contribution and community. And that's what we need. You think that kid's not going to grow up someday and be like, yeah, if I'm looking out for the person who's hurting in my community. How can I be more generous? What can I do? What a beautiful way to train up a child. All right. So that's number 2. The third way that we teach our children to be strong is by reminding them of basic truth. You are loved just as you are. You don't have to earn the right to be loved, not from anyone. You see, when I grew up, now my parents did not teach me this, but I know that a lot of kids picked up the message that you are loved as long as you are obedient. You are loved as long as you are submissive. You are loved as long as you agree with what we believe. That is not love. That's earned favor. That's not love. So those kids who are raised with the thought that they have to earn love, they go out into the world trying to earn love. And it's so sad. It's so sad to see how that plays out in their dating life, in their marriage, and maybe even in the next generation, unless they become aware of that tendency. But when we believe we are loved, that is one, just as we are. Don't need to earn it. I seriously think that that was probably one of the confidences and assurances that my parents instilled in me that made me able to avoid the pitfalls of being attracted to a controlling or abusive or neglectful man. I remember hearing the story one time. I had a college roommate, and she had been engaged and then broke it off. And she said, I kept on dating him and waiting for him to make time for me. And it seemed like there was never any time. And I thought, well, maybe that's just me being selfish. And she said, but it just didn't feel loving. It just didn't feel like he was really interested in me. So she broke it off. But I remember telling her, oh, no, like I was so positive. Siri just took over for a second. I have to stop her. Okay. And I've also got to turn on notifications. Focus for 1 hour. But when she told me that, I was like, no, because I remember my mom telling the story of this is what love looks like. She said when she was young, dating my dad, they were engaged. When she was young and dating my dad, she said, your dad would work this really, really long, hard shift as a farmhand. And then he would drive so far just to spend 30 minutes or an hour with me. Love makes time. Love puts that person first. That's what love looks like. This person that she was dating, who I believe was a preacher, we were at Bible college, his desire was to find somebody that would contribute to his life, fit in with his dreams, prop him up. He wasn't looking for a partnership. He wasn't looking for somebody that there'd be mutual submission to. He was not looking for somebody he could love and put first, as in love your wife above all others. He was just looking for a prop, somebody that would assist him in his dreams. Submissive children. If we raise our children to be submissive, then they will think that's how it's supposed to be. But that's not how it's supposed to be. I could go so much into this topic, but this will be another topic about strong versus submissive marriages. Also, if you'd like to hear a topic on marriage, strong versus submissive, put that in the comments. I've been doing some research on that. I've been thinking about that a lot too. And also, I'm very, very hesitant to share it if nobody's wanting or willing to listen. If you have any parenting questions, put those in the comments. This will be posted on YouTube. This will be posted on the podcast. Go ahead and put them in the comments. If you would like to hear other thoughts that I have, or if you'd like to continue this conversation privately, sign up for my newsletter at aprilbragg.com. Just scroll down to the bottom of the page, and then you'll be able to reach me and you'll be able to message me. Listen, as a parent, you are getting so much conflicting advice, and I don't want to add to the conflict. And I certainly don't want to disempower you from one of the most important jobs that you'll ever sign up for in your life. But just keep it very, very simple. Parenting does not have to be complicated. Think about your kids when they are 18, 19, 20 years old. What do you want them? What is it that you would like for them to say about your parenting? Now, clue, they're not going to say this when they're 18. Maybe they'll say it when they're 25. Maybe they'll say it when they're 30. But the reason we ask this question is not so that we can get them to say it, but that's so we know what it is that's our true goal as a parent. I wanted my kids to say, Mom trained me well for life. I feel like I understood things and had a heads up. And I appreciate that she taught us the value of hard work. And I know she loved us. Those were the simple things. Those were the things. I know she loved us. And when I got clear on what it was I wanted to hear from my kids' mouth when they were older, whether they ever say it or not, then I knew what it was that I was wanting to instill in them while they're still young, while I still have an opportunity. By the way, I didn't figure some of these out until they were teenagers. It's not too late, especially if we stop thinking that the goal is to train them to be submissive, train them to be obedient, and we start realizing we're training them to be strong. Yes, obedience is a skill that comes in very, very helpful, especially if you are at work and you can be like, we can agree to disagree, boss, but you're paying my check. So therefore, yeah, as long as you're my boss, we'll do it your way. Even though I know that the other way might be better, we can do it your way. But then a strong kid might say, and also, maybe you just won't be my boss forever. Maybe I'll go start my own company. But a submissive kid just doesn't even have those conversations, have those thoughts. They just think there must be something wrong with me because I keep on doing all these things and it seems like nobody's happy. Strong. Raise strong children. Okay? Don't think that train up a child in the way he should go, he'll never depart from it. Remember, we are training them in something, whether we are aware of it or not. So choose wisely the things that you want to train them. All right, that's all I've got. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.